Hey guys, Riley here, and I'm sitting down with Mickey Schuch from Carry Trainer. Super excited. Mickey came out here from Illinois to Denver and spending a little bit of time together today. So
happy to be here.
A moment ago we were just talking about training, and I respect your viewpoints on training. And you just put on a great training event, the S12 event, this last weekend. The reports coming back from people I know and trust, friends of mine even, spoke very highly of the event and how it came off. And hope to maybe be there one day myself. So
hope you do.
Training. We were just talking a little bit about, and I like what you said. For a lot of people, and I don't mean to judge anybody, because you know what, I love seeing people train. Like you brought up the whole idea of, hey, a lot of people, training's become a hobby for them. And I think there's a lot worse hobbies you could have out there.
Yeah,
a lot
wrong
less productive hobbies for sure. Training is a good thing, but we can obviously take things too far one way, as opposed to like what is the purpose for our training, or what is our end goal? Like what is our why, so to speak? Like I got into this and this career, if you will, because I was a concealed carrier and still am, and I'm very passionate about that. Why am I? Because I woke up one day and realized I had a little child that I was responsible for, and now I have 5 of them that I got to take care of, and they're looking to me to be that person if something goes down in their world. Like to them, their world is a safe, secure space, and it it is generally speaking, but some things can change in an instant, and I'm the guy that they're looking to make sure that it stays a safe, secure space for them. And so, for me, I carry a gun to ensure that, in the event something bad happens, like I can, I have an option. I have a way. It's like your shirt says right there, be your own cavalry. So that's my why. It's protecting me and my family.
I dig it.
You
touched on, I think, like 5 important points, maybe even 6 there. Training, it has become a hobby, and is that bad? No. But something we challenge people on is physical fitness, number 1. Mental health. So you could be a grandmaster, top of the world shooter, but go home and treat your kids like garbage. So you've protected them from physical violence, from predation outside the home, but now you've brought home garbage. Yeah. So there's issues like that I think people might listen to this and they say, hey, I'm trying to just figure out how to get better with the gun. And you have missed the whole concept of what all of this is about, which is protecting yourself we say live a long, full life. Full means different things to different people. I'm a country boy. We're in the middle of a huge city. Some people love the city, some people love the country. So we don't all have to have and want the same things, but due to social media, you get this too, because you teach abstract questions that without context, there's no meaning. Hey, what's the best holster, Riley? Well, what are you going to do with the gun? What's it for? Are you going bear hunting? Do you got to put a 44 mag on your chest, or are you trying to take a 380 in your back pocket? And are you an undercover police officer? Are you a mom? Do you have 8 kids with you? Do you have 5? Do you work in the inner city? Like, there's just a million questions. What's your level of experience with the firearm? And we look at things too much from what's he or she doing out there in cyberspace, rather than what are my goals? Like you said, I've got these group of kids, I've got a wife, and in addition to violence, does dad gonna die of a heart attack at 50 because he's stressed out at work? So I was able to protect my kids to high school age, and now I'm dead of a stroke or a heart attack because you didn't do the other things. And we don't want to get preachy and put people down, but if you can't tie your shoes on the range without getting out of breath, if you can't move 100 yards without getting out of breath, if you always bypass the stairs, if you always look for a way to make things easy, that's the result you're going to get. And in violence, we don't rise to the occasion. We usually fall to our highest level of training, which has to be, and I know I'm not preaching to you, we're just talking to the folks on the other end of the camera, we're going to fall to our highest level of training, and that training needs to be directed to whatever we want. If I'm spending all my time doing multi-shooter drills with my buddies playing dress up, you ain't with me when I'm in the mall parking lot. Corey and Kanan aren't with us. We're by ourselves. So why am I training those things? Not that you shouldn't, but because you might be on a church security detail, you might be in a position that you do those things, but I think people need to drill into what problems they really may face in life.
Well, that's what I would call context. And context, I think, is, I refer to context a lot, probably overly so, but because it's important. Because everybody's context is different.
Yeah.
Where you are in your life is different than where I am in my life, and our various needs and all that are very different. So we need to be in tune with what those needs are, what our context actually is, and where possible, our training should be relevant to that. You know, training something that's completely out of context for me, well, okay, it's fun, it's cool, throwing lead down range and learning, high speed stuff, but probably doesn't apply to what I need relative to what I shared about, protecting my 5 kids and my wife.
And then you think about things like, does your wife and kids know CPR? When's the last time you did a fire drill at the house? When's the last time you talked to them? Kanan and I and my wife were heading out of Nashville last week, and we blew a tire out on our trailer, which is full of 5,000 pounds of gear and steel. And I had to stop on the inside lane of the highway. I drive 40,000 miles a year. It's scary to change a tire with cars going 80 miles an hour past you like butt to butt. We had a plan for that, but still it's very dangerous. Do people even talk about things like that with your teenage kids? Hey, daughter, if this happens, or son, how do you do that? And I think we could make ourselves fearful thinking about everything, but that's why we've trained. So daughter, if this happens, try to get to the right side of the road, or son, and work through those problems from that capacity. It's too easy to get fixated on one solution. We have guns off of us all the time. If you fly in an airplane, go on cruise ships, go to the post office, go to a federal building, go to a courthouse. I mean, there's a million places that we don't have firearms. Do you have the capability or wherewithal to protect yourself in those settings? And what does that even mean? Does Andrew Branca, who you guys do work with, are people studying the ways that they can legally use force where they live? I mean, these are all pretty easy topics to research nowadays.
I mean, what you're talking about is, I think for most of us, there's something deep inside that's driving us, pushing us in this direction, whatever that is. If it's a concealed carry lifestyle, self-defense lifestyle, whatever. At the core of it, I think for many of us is self-preservation of some sort. And really what you're talking about here is self-preservation is, I mean, that's a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Like your physical health. You were just bringing that up a minute ago. It's really applying to me, like hearing those words like, yep, okay, because the last few months I've been working to try to get back to where I once was. Some things happened last year that kind of made me go, okay, I'm getting older, slower, and fatter, and not as healthy as I need to be. So I'm working on getting back to where I need to be. Thankfully, I mean, I've actually lost 20 pounds in the last
awesome,
2-3
man.
months.
That's awesome.
So it's, yes, it is awesome. And it's also encouraging because, all right, now let's take it to the next level. Let's take it to the next level. Self-preservation, I mean, talking about the law stuff, the legal stuff, that's also a form of self-preservation. Because if you're spending the rest of your life behind bars, or even 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, it's not a long, full life. It's a long life, but it's not very full.
I mean, it's destroying your life.
Yeah.
It's changing your life forever. And frankly, I mean, there's science out there that shows guys that spend time in prison don't live as long as others. So
probably a pretty stressful environment.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, context is important, but also being holistic in that context.
Yeah.
Not overlooking things.
I mean, for me, the overarching theme is the full life part. I think we get super fixated on, I had a guy call me on the way out here that's coming to one of our classes, and he had a lot of concerns about the gear that he was bringing to our class. Gun, holster, lights, all that jazz. And I said, I don't care, man. Like, that stuff's ancillary. Yeah, you need a safe gun, you need a safe holster, you gotta have eye and ear protection, but that stuff's ancillary. That's because, and I think sometimes we get flippant. We just say, those are the tools, you're the weapon. Like, well, I mean, you do need a good gun and all that stuff, but he was fixated on it to the point where he was getting stressed out. It's like, well, let's just, breathe here a little bit, think about what we're doing, and not over analyze something that we don't need to. I think the other big thing especially most of your viewers, I'm assuming, are U.S. citizens, is the protection of liberty here. Not in a crazy way, but I think all of this, the big encompassing context is responsibility. I'm responsible for me, I'm responsible for my kids, I'm responsible for my health, my income, my happiness, but I'm also responsible for the proliferation of our republic. And in this community, like people that seek to do right, carry firearms to get home to their family, we have a huge gap where folks look to government as an enemy rather than looking at them as a representative of us.
Yeah.
And while there's tons of stuff that's nasty going on in leadership, it's all our fault, is the way I look at it.
Yep.
And people hate hearing me say that because they say, well, I didn't do it, either through apathy and lack of being involved or through purposeful electing of representatives that are tearing our government up. You did do it. So either through not trying or through trying, you did. And it seems like a big problem, but if everybody that watched sports games paid attention to elections, if everybody that watched sitcoms on TV or Netflix paid attention to this stuff, if everybody that was concerned about whatever leisure things we do in our life, if just imagine if everybody spent an hour a month concerned about what was going on in their school boards, in their city councils, in their state, just an hour. Because I know for me, I don't always do that. I used to be deeply involved in politics, and I don't at the moment have the time to do that. But I mean, millions of people, 300 million Americans, if we all spend an hour a month, that's 300 million hours a month of people holding elected officials' feet to the fire, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And like you, I've been in various times of my life, either more involved or less involved. Been involved in the local scene quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Participating in the whether it's a primary or a caucus type process. Like a lot of people overlook a lot of that stuff, especially if you're in a state where your state's a caucusing state. Like that's very much a local process.
Yeah.
You're bringing your local community together into one place, and like. I've been to a number of those caucus meetings where you're in this room about the size of where we are today with 20 other people, and everyone's kind of looking at each other like,
Sure.
afraid to speak, afraid to say stuff, like who's going to speak first, that kind of stuff. Like what's important to us in our community right here.
Yeah.
And like, hey, show up, speak up.
Yeah.
Say what's on your mind. Because I promise you that makes a difference. I've seen stuff that I've supported at that caucus level that's been voted up and gone on to the higher levels as, we've then put those on platforms of parties and worked to get those pushed into laws at a state level and that kind of stuff. So we can't, it's so easy to we spend more time, and I'm sure you've seen this, I know I see it all the time, we spend more time on social media being angry and upset
100%.
at stuff that we don't directly control on a national level than we do actually doing stuff that makes a difference at a local level.
Agreed. I think a good case study would be Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA. I met Charlie when he was still in high school. A local fundraising group brought him out to a Republican breakfast. This is 8-10 years ago. Nobody knew who he was, and I was asked to show up because I ran a non-for-profit for gun rights. So I'll come meet this kid. He's a nice kid. Like, hey, good luck, have a good future. And now he's on the national stage, which is not by chance or happenstance. And the kid literally worked tirelessly. And whether you agree with their motives and what they do, it doesn't matter for my point. It's focused effort over and over. And that's somebody that's like super detailed into a certain project, which not everybody's going to have that drive, but just paying attention, just like you maintain your home. You got to power wash the house from time to time. You got to stain the deck. You got to fix the roof. We got to do the same thing for our communities. And it's too easy, and we've gotten too accepting of this mindset that it's their problem, they did this, I'm just doing my thing. That's not how America was built at all. That's not what a republic is.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. I like that. We've kind of taken a little bit of I think an interesting sidebar here in this conversation today. But again, I mean, talking about self-preservation. I mean, if we lose our republic, then then our lives will change,
Yeah.
and our lives will likely get more difficult, and more difficult to pursue those things that we enjoy, that make us free, that allow us to be, in a little more in control of our destiny, if you will.
Even to do what we're doing now.
Yeah.
This is not normal for most of the world to be able to enjoy the things that we all get to do on a daily basis.
That's right. There was one thing that I want to kind of go back to that you said earlier. I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit more about, and it is that phrase, idiom, almost if you will, in this industry of you're not going to rise to the occasion.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to fall down to your level of training. I wanted to ask your thought on. I have a little bit of a different way of phrasing that, and this is also a pretty key component of how I approach training, especially with regards to the use of my gun, because it is a skill that takes some time to develop. It is something that takes practice. Same could be said of hand-to-hand combatives, BJJ, that kind of stuff too. But specifically as it relates to shooting a firearm, what I see is I analyze civilian cases of self-defense shootings. You see a lot of people that are of a relatively low skill level, that are able to do just enough in that moment, in that instance, to actually succeed. And sometimes some of those shootings are quite abysmal. If you have footage of it, and you're just like, ooh, like I don't think that guy's ever even drawn his pistol from a holster before, But in that moment, he was able to do just enough to get it out and get it on target and fire some shots. For me, the way I kind of think of that idea of falling down to your lowest level of training, for me, it's we really do fall down to what we are subconsciously competent at, right? And everything else that we're able to do requires conscious thought. So we may be able to think in the moment, well, I can do this or I can do that, but the truth of the matter is, there's a lot of psychological and mental overload occurring when lives are at stake. And so I kind of want to ask you what your thoughts were on what do you think are some ways, some strategies? What are some things that you've done to ensure that you really kind of are competent at a subconscious level or a level of automaticity in terms of your ability to perform under stress?
A lot to unpack there. I think I think your point's spot on. I think even what's autonomous, we all can drive a car in text, which we shouldn't. Not everybody can drive a truck like B.J. Baldwin or some other race car driver. I can drive my truck 100 miles an hour down the highway. It doesn't mean I can drive it off-road even at 30 miles an hour. Somebody might be extremely capable of navigating their vehicle while talking with an earbud in, playing with the radio, drinking a coffee, but now you dump adrenaline into the system and you put them into a situation outside of that. That skill set is built around driving down the road going to work. That skill set's not built around evading a vehicle coming over the median. This is new information. So even at an autonomous level, you've never told your brain how to deal with a car coming over the median. You've never told yourself how to deal with being in one of the mountainous roads here, sliding sideways on ice. You've stayed home on those days. So what's the goal? Well, the goal is I want to be able to win in violence. So you create parameters, right? I want to be able to present a pistol and engage a target this big or this big at this distance in this time frame. Standards, right? There's standards. And that's what guys like Jeff Cooper and dudes that long ago when they created IPSC were trying to do. And then ultimately IDPA with Bill Wilson and Ken Hackathorn and those guys was let's codify some standards. And too often, we do see these very low-level examples of guns being used to defend somebody. Do you need to look a certain way? Definitely not. Greg Elifritz and Claude Werner have both compiled thousands of gunfight bits of data. Claude Werner, he did an article where he says if you could take 3 pieces of notebook paper, turn them sideways, so 11.5 by 25 inches, 24.5 inches, something like that. That's a pretty big target zone. He said if a person can draw and hit that in about 2 seconds, they'll probably win most gunfights. Problem is probably, but that's based on thousands of of bits of information. And the reason that is usually it's a chaotic environment, so the composed person usually is the one that survives. We find, looking at data, I'm a graduate of the Force Science Institute, and oftentimes you're talking about processing speeds and things of that nature, and there's so much we could talk about in this. We think about this one instance. If I have to draw, and this is so we see videos where guys are getting ready to practice, right? Or you in your USPSA matches, right? You're ready.
Right.
I know my gun's here and I've got all this gear here, but in reality, it's the proverbial ATM machine, which who uses ATM machines anymore? It's usually we are attacked in an ambush scenario, in bed at night, going to your car, dark, trying to get the keys, hands full of work junk.
No.
It's not waiting for a beep, waiting for some type of stimulus that you know I'm going to engage. So the training needs to be analogous to that. The next thing is, so we have got a lot of isms in the training world, right? We say things like we fall to the highest level of training. We say exposure equals composure. The more you're exposed to a thing, the more you're composed in it. I remember being in my 20s having to talk to a group of 10 people and having heart palpitations, being nervous. Now I can talk to anybody because I imagine you're all naked, whatever, right? That's how you do it. But
is that what I am to you?
Yeah.
Naked? Okay.
He looks good. But the concept though is that the more you do the thing correctly, the more composed you get.
Right.
So that is the challenge with training. Is what you're doing preparing you for the realities of violence? I know I had two men, Kanan met them at our home. Kanan's off camera, guys, my nephew that works for us, met him at our home a few weeks ago. Jared Reston, a SWAT cop from South Florida, and a friend of his, who I'd never met his buddy, but I knew who he was. Two men at my dinner table that had both been shot in the face and lived to go back to work for a decade. They both prevailed in violence. Jared was shot 7 times. His partner, his first indication of violence was a man shooting him basically from a foot away with a revolver right through his jaw. Most of his teeth are fake. The round exited out his neck. We assume that when we're going to fight based on training, because this is what we see in training, I'm going to square off at a piece of cardboard or steel 2, 5, 10 yards away. I'm going to wait for some audible stimulus, and I'm going to draw and shoot it. Is that the reality of violence? Does a bad guy say, hey, good person, on the count of 3, 1? No, that doesn't happen. So are we training to pay attention? And if you look at the videos that have covered the internet now of violence, and then read the comment section, a thread that goes through those comments is always spatial awareness, situational awareness. But awareness of what? I can't pay attention to what's going on in the parking lot while I'm talking to you. I can't pay attention to even what these guys are doing as I'm talking to you. So we have to learn through responsibility what to give our attention to. When I'm driving, am I attentive to the radio in my texting, or am I attentive to oncoming traffic? And it's a silly analogy that seems so simple, but you choose.
Yep.
Like I always joke, the sub-second draw, you can probably draw in under a second. I can too. If my life hinges on the balance of 7/10 or 8/10 or 9/10 of a second, I have wildly screwed up and disregarded mountains of other information.
Yep.
I mean, there's not some mythical creature falling out of the sky with talons and hooks sucking us up, right? It's something's happened. Even if I step out of a street and a car hits me, that car came from somewhere. So I didn't see it. If I walk into a space and somebody's got a gun in my face, what did I not do? I probably didn't stop and look as I entered the space. So I think that is kind of this broader mindset, and it's really easy to get super fixated on one thing. I love shotguns. I love bullseye shooting. I love, IPSC or IDPA. Great, but can you do 10 push-ups? And so you mentioned combatives. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We're going to the compound gym here in town tonight to roll with those guys. Nice. I don't know how many guys come to class, and I know I can grab you and put you on the ground, not because I'm better than you, but I can just tell by the way you walk, and I could hold you there and there's nothing you could do about it. That should scare the crap out of you, because it's if another man can hold you against your will or physically impose his will on you and you can't get to your gun, that's why classes like Craig Douglas, like ShivWorks have come to be. How do I fight through this really crummy situation of being put in a diminished position? So now you can go down that rabbit hole.
Yep.
But again, what put you on your back? Not paying attention.
Something got missed somewhere.
Yeah, something.
Some of that is, to your point of, well, situational awareness. Exactly. You can't be truly 360 degree
Your brain would
aware all
burn
the
out
time.
in 2 days.
Yeah.
You'd be burned out in 2 days.
So a lot of it is skills relating to risk assessment and evaluation, like understanding the environment that you're in the context of what are my most likely threats? What do I need to pay attention to? Something changes in my environment. Oh, do I need to take a look at that, see what's going on there? Just having a more clear understanding of what are the likely risks, and then being able to apply the appropriate mental bandwidth so that we can hopefully see those before they come.
And as our capabilities increase, I was at a restaurant with like 5 black belts and a bunch of just really tough MMA fighters. Everybody's pretty relaxed. None of these people are like, where's the problem? Not only are they relaxed because they themselves on a daily basis are involved in physical violence, but I'm with 20 people that I know are going to protect me. And, unless a missile flies into this building, we're going to be okay. Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, one of those guys is with his wife alone in a strange place. That guy's going to probably act completely different. And so I think you need to be able to ratchet things up and down. The way we carry ourselves, though, talking about Andrew Branca earlier, how many times do we, you got the FTA, the CCW safe hat, guy's hat on, how many times do we see violence where it could have been completely avoided, but somebody allowed their ego to let them get sucked into a situation, and now
you have taken something of my honor away or offended me in some way. You gotta stand up. I gotta stand up for myself. I can't live with myself. I walk away kind of attitude.
I think, and then that, depending on the person, like Corey seems like a pretty level-headed guy. Corey might say, I'm not the guy that, I would be dumb. I would never allow myself to get sucked into that. But the guy who grew up in an abusive home where somebody touching him or looking at him a certain way, or somebody that grew up in violence or grew up in a situation where they were exposed to that, social cues are completely different. So maybe for that individual, I need to really focus on the inward stuff. Maybe Corey needs to focus on the outward stuff. I'm just making an example. But so that's that know yourself kind of a situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is why we can't just blanket say everybody studies 8 hours of this,
Yeah, because everybody's different and has different needs and different areas where they're strong, different areas where they're weak. I mean, and even this little bit of this sidebar, this conversation, we could take right back to where we started about a more holistic, context-based approach to our training, which training, if we were to define based on this conversation today, would be what am I doing today, tomorrow, this week, this month to make myself better in some way, right? The whole ego thing, getting sucked into fights that happens way more frequently than it should. That's an emotional control thing. That's a being in control of your mental and emotional faculties, and some people can manage it better than others. And that is something that we can all get better at. We can all get better at being more in control of.
And saying I was angry or he pissed me off doesn't get you out of murder or some charge against you. He really made me mad, Judge. That doesn't work. Just like I was late doesn't get you out of a speeding ticket. You still did the thing. I had a friend, his name was Jerry Gardner. Jerry passed away probably 2-3 years ago. He was in his 80s, so he lived a long, I think what was a very full life. He was on the board of our Right to Carry Association. Small guy. He was probably 5'7", lightly built, and this guy could run 2 or 3 miles in his 80s. And very calm, quiet guy. He was the oldest guy every year to shoot at the single stack down in Florida. USPSA IPSC competitor. And people that knew Jerry, he was in the Army, he raised his family and was just a great, generous dude. He always had lots of weapons on him. And didn't flaunt it. There was always a blade hanging around his neck. There was a blade on his belt. There was a blade behind his belt. And there was always at least 2 guns on him. And all hidden well. And he was not a paranoid dude. And like I remember one time somebody going, Jer, what's up? You think you're go to war? And he'd say, he was actually talking to a friend of mine at the time, and I'm sitting there listening, and he said, Riley, if you got on top of me, I'm 83. You're probably going to break bones. I'm going to die in a wheelchair or, die in a nursing home because I break stuff. I ain't playing around. And that was his way of dealing with aging. But he had a good attitude, but he knew I can't do the same things I could when I was making Riley's age. I couldn't do the same things I could when I was 60. And the odds were way different. The odds of survival. So as we age, your sub-second draw stroke is going to go away.
Yep.
Your ability to grab somebody and throw them through a wall is going to go away. So things have to change. And I think that's the other thing. When we rely on strength and speed and all these things, what happens when you're 70? What happens when you're 80? What happens, then I just sit in a rocking chair and the world does no wrong. Well, there's old people that are hurt and injured all the time. All the time. There's people that have disabilities that are injured and hurt all the time. So we have to be able to constantly adjust to how we change. But that dude, Jerry, was in good shape. Even in his 80s, he walked and
it's a good thing to aspire
ran.
for.
Yeah.
I was thinking, that reminded me of my own grandmother who's still alive in her 90s. And,
awesome.
Even until just recently, she's still very healthy. But I remember as a child, I'd be like, Grandma, every day you go for a walk for like 5 miles. Like, why? Like, walking is so boring, And she just said, it's keep me healthy and I enjoy going for a walk. And here she is 90 and still very mobile and very functional. So, this has been a great conversation with you, man. Thinking in terms of our physical health and strength, mental, emotional health, the ability to fight, physically or shoot or even, being aware of our situations that we're in. There's a lot of different areas that if we're serious about our training, if we're serious about truly defending ourselves and those that we care about, it's a lot to take in. And it's a great responsibility. It's one of those things that, now I fully, I don't know if I should say I fully understand, but compared to when I first strapped a gun on my hip, carried it concealed, as a young man, if you had told me all this at that point, I would have been just like, what? It was like a little bit overwhelming. But that is, it's a great responsibility.
Huge.
That, either we take seriously or we don't. We're all at different points along this spectrum, if you will, or this journey of becoming whatever it is that we envision we want to become. But I would just say that I hope that everybody in some way is doing something today to make them a little bit better tomorrow in any one of those areas. Because I think if we're constantly like, what am I doing today to make myself a better person? We're going to keep moving forward.
Agreed. You said responsibility again. I think we've got this misunderstanding of how our Constitution provides us these protections. They're only there because we keep them. And when we're not good stewards of them, we strap guns up and do stupid stuff out in public. It empowers people to fight to take them away. And it's incumbent upon us to be good stewards of this republic and of the rights we have.
Yep. Amen, brother. It's been awesome talking with you today. I appreciate you doing this
Glad
with
you
us
had
and
us out.
stopping by concealedcarry.com headquarters. And
It was awesome.
let's go get some lunch.
Let's do it.
Thanks for watching, guys.